James.
Raf. Another week at the microphone.
Yeah, here we are once again.
Once again.
At the coalface.
Bringing you tech news, updates, gadget reviews.
Yep.
Life advice,
That's
horoscopes.
Right. Geopolitics.
For
sure.
We'll definitely be getting into geopolitics. We've earmarked 75 minutes to talk about the turmoil in the Middle East and our various views on that. You know, make sure your kids aren't in the room. That's all I'm going to say. We're not going to talk about that. Sorry, folks.
No, that's it's not our place.
It's not our place. We're a tech podcast. We don't rise above our station. We talk about technology. Anything to relate to the computer.
Yeah.
Missile targeting systems. Computer adjacent. But you know what? That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I agree
For our next editorial policies meeting.
The down round stance is we'd like peace.
Yep. No war. But there's a few things going on in the world of tech. We've got a couple of things we want to talk about today. The first is another Canva acquisition.
Yes.
And
just weeks after, but this one hits a little closer to home than Leonardo.
It hits a little closer to home.
Leonardo was obviously quite close to home, but
in that it is a Sydney-based startup.
Yes.
But Magic Brief, which was co-founded by a good friend of the pod, Dan Nolan.
Yeah.
Who I think he was like a guest on like episode 5 of Down Round.
He was talking about AI.
He was talking about AI. He was down on AI at the time. I think he still a little bit is. But he has an AI adjacent company, so maybe he's not super down on it. And George Howes, who I believe is a Down Round listener. So I'm not going to credit us for all their success, because I assume there was a bit of app development in there. Some go-to-market strategy that we weren't totally across. But I think it's fair to say that 30 to 35% of their success is probably
that makes sense.
Contributable to us.
Yeah. So around a third.
A third safe.
They've been acquired by Canva, another company we mentioned.
We've mentioned Canva, and we have Canva listeners. There are people on all sides of the deal here who are Down Round adjacent. So again, big dub for us. Not monetary, but a moral victory.
Yeah, absolutely. Just whatever. We're making things happen as usual.
But
let's very quickly explain it, because it does. And also the Canva episode we did the other week was behind the paywall. So we did talk on that episode about Canva, obviously the graphic design software, their strategy, in summary, going more enterprise in order to kind of really increase the value of your business.
They're locking in, because people have been expecting Canva to go public. They had a crazy COVID era valuation of $40 billion. You know, obviously that was the ZERP era. Lots of companies had very inflated valuations. Some went public at the time. Canva did not. They were relatively disciplined about the way they went about things. But obviously that leaves them in a bit of a tough spot where they had a massive valuation that's very hard for them to achieve again. So they are sort of locking in. And one of the things they are doing is expanding for enterprise and making themselves appealing, not just for, you know, your local non-profit and your local teacher, your startups, you know, the kind of people that use Canva.
Something we called for a year ago, and glad to see that was the internal strategy.
Totally. Thanks for listening. And now they've been making lots of moves to be more enterprise ready, so that, you know, Fortune 500 companies will subscribe to Canva.
Yeah, and Magic Brief, which brings us to Magic Brief, which is all about if you want to do some advertising, looking at different ads in your sector, what a company's doing well, what works, what doesn't, kind of building out this campaign using AI to kind of analyze
ads, find out what's working, what's not. And I think it's kind of critical to say that, you know, Magic Brief is built for the modern ad age, where it's not just like, you know, we're not talking about guys in suits sitting around in a Madison Avenue office and thinking about big, exciting brand campaigns. We're talking about brands that are doing extremely high intensity ad campaigns with a lot of speed, where you're operating in the world where it's like every week you got to have new ad creative, trying something new, following the trends, A-B. You're constantly putting stuff out, and when it stops working, you're immediately pivoting to something else. That's the world. I mean, it's the world a lot of brands operate in. A Magic Brief sort of helps that. It's like a command center for digital advertising.
Coming up with advertising campaigns, building them out, comparing them to competitors in the market, that kind of thing. So it makes sense that from a Canva perspective, again, that's not a cafe play. That's not a play for people who are like making their birthday party invites.
Doing birthday party invites.
It's like a ad campaign manager play, which again just speaks to that moving to enterprise, locking into enterprise.
I think the critical, because the missing piece of Canva is that obviously Canva gets used to produce lots of ads. There are people that use Canva to build Facebook ads, but Canva can help you make an ad or like a social media tile or whatever that looks lovely and is brand safe, and even the stupidest person in your organization can make it without making it look bad, but it can't actually tell you whether it's good and effective and is producing results, getting engagement, having people click on it and convert. So by bringing Magic Brief into the Canva product, that's obviously what they want to do.
Yeah, as well as, they've got now the spreadsheet kind of product. So then there's like reporting and analytics now within Canva to a certain extent. And like you can customize those, spreadsheets, etc. Obviously, the big question is, can Canva become this like highly optimized creative ad platform that, is able to kind of constantly be spinning up and comparing these ads that you're hoping will convert into sales before Facebook just becomes a platform where you don't even upload any assets from Canva.
This is absolutely the fear that...
And you just say, sell my product, and Facebook's generating the images, it's generating the videos, it's generating the friggin' avatar talking about your product with the scripts, and every single ad is individualized with the understanding that like every single ad that you're making in Canva and then posting to Facebook is actually training Facebook's algorithm on what the best performing creative is.
Yeah. I mean, that's as we've talked about time and time again, Meta definitely wants to be in a position where it's like,
No, Zuckerberg says it.
Yeah, exactly. Zuckerberg says it. This world where it's like, you have a product that you want to advertise on Meta, you show them what your product is, you show them your website.
And you tell them what the ROAS is, you tell them what the return on ad spend you want is. Like, I want to generate 150%, and that will make me a profit.
Yep. And
Full stop.
That's it. Like, you don't even have to... I mean, obviously, we're well past the part where you have to specifically pick the targeting on Facebook, but you don't have to worry about creative, you don't have to worry about anything. It generates it for you with, like, Llama's image and video generation stuff. You just sit back and let it advertise for you.
And it'll bring in, sales at the ROAS that you're targeting. Obviously, like graphic design, there's more than just like ads on Facebook for graphic design. But I mean, there's more, but there's not a whole lot more that's like revenue accretive. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the Canva bet with Magic Brief and also with everything else is like, if we can just be the design layer for the Fortune 500, and they can justify it themselves internally by being like, rather than hiring X number of graphic designers, we will have a Canva subscription that lets us do all these different... We make, this is part of like Canva's thesis where it's like design becomes a function and not a job within an organization. It's a function that everyone has access to.
Which is what Canva kind of actually did for, again, like for social media managers or whatever.
100%.
Especially in like NFPs and SMBs or whatever. They're, maybe kind of like 7 years ago or something, like social media managers and junior social media people came along where they were just making the assets in Canva. They didn't expect to have the ability to brief in a designer. You know what I mean? That like they were just like, oh no, I make the assets. I just make it in Canva. Like that's what I do. Yeah. And which already changed, like, as you say, like, and this is just an extension of that, where it's like you have, I guess, a brand team that is working out what your brand is, putting in the brand guidelines, and then everyone else is just a de facto designer.
Yeah. Well, I remember at like the very beginning of my career when I was working at like marketing agencies and like small startup marketing agencies, and like your bottleneck in many cases was like the graphic designer you had on team. Who could only get through so many different fucking social media tiles and banners and whatever per day. And you'd have to like manage around that. Whereas like obviously Canva smashed that open by making it possible for like a graphic designer to do the initial work of building out the guidelines and building out what the look and what are the different templates and formats we have, and then after that, they can totally run it without having to know how to use Photoshop or whatever.
Which is where, like, there's this interesting kind of, I don't know if it's bet or more just like unknown about the future, in that there are going to be obviously organizations who don't give a fuck about brand. This whole thing we've talked about this probably since we started down around. In fact, it's been like a topic for like 20 years. It's performance marketing versus brand marketing. The classic brand marketers being like, well, Apple, but like Nike, etc. We talked about Nike went down the performance marketing avenue, they retreated from it, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Like brand, this idea, something that you just innately trust and recognize, versus performance marketing being like the link you click in order to purchase being fully attributed, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. In some ways, there's a bet here that it's like brand will still be important. Not everyone is going to go down the path of like, I don't even give a fuck about
what you show someone.
Yeah, what I show someone, what someone's idea of my brand is, as long as like it's effective for that individual. I don't care if there's some like holistic brand narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
Where people have some kind of experience.
This guy literally only clicks on like weirdly janky animated pictures of like big titty elves.
Yeah.
So if that's what you got to show him to sell my shoes to him,
yeah,
I liberate myself of caring. There will be brands like, I mean, the big ones, like Apple is never going to do that. Apple has a very coherent brand in the way they advertise stuff.
But like within, is there a, Facebook can obviously start to can put certain guardrails in and like use certain assets. I guess the question is like, how is there a future in which like being incredibly brand safe is just like not feasible anymore? And like the feasibility is there's enough bounds within Facebook where you're just like, never use people or whatever, always have everyone fully clothed, like never be sexual, whatever it is. Like there's certain kind of guardrails, but otherwise go for it. And some people are going to respond to, vaporwave and the beach, and like young people, other people are going to respond to like classical music and sophisticated, 50-year-olds with like cropped grey hair or whatever, whatever, like is within those confines.
I've always thought like one thing that I remember stood out to me when it first started happening, where I had the thought of like, oh fuck, this is probably the future of everything. When like ghost kitchens and stuff used to pop up on Uber, where it was like one restaurant would appear on Uber Eats as like 6 different brands, and like it would be like some a Lebanese pizza place, but they also did fried chicken. And they would just set up like a completely fake
exactly,
fried
and they
chicken
do
brand.
Like, American like hamburger, cheeseburger place as well.
And they would all have psycho names where like if you saw it in person in the restaurant, you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? But if you see it at 11:30 p.m. and you're absolutely blitzed on Uber Eats, you're like, the big nasty chicken is what I need right now.
Yeah.
Like
the
that,
double heart attack, artery clogging burger or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Like, like thinking, is that like just the future
of all brands?
Of all brands.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we provide the manufacturing or the service or whatever, and then AI just fucking figures out how everything that makes it appealing to you.
Like, I would like to hope that somewhere, like, there is this kind of certain brands, in particular, like premium brands, there'll be a je ne sais quoi where, like, as we talked about before, the thing with AI is it's always kind of, it's really just aiming to be the best version of average. It's my, my kind of philosophy of AI is that it's always going to be good. Like, it's always going to give you a good essay. It's always going to give you a good image. It's always going to give you a good thing.
Pleasantly mid.
Yeah, like slightly like better than mid. It's going to give you better than mid, but it can never like by its very nature. And I know this is very like we were talking about him last week, Jan LeCun, where it's like an LLM or at least a transformer model, as the way we have them, can't make something truly innovative and great because it's always going to give you like
the average
the best version of the average of the thing that you're like prodding it to do. That's like in some ways now for me, it's like that is. Like, I kind of hope that's the case, that it's like AI and LLMs will always be like pretty good, but like to make something truly great, and like breakthrough, you still will need that kind of human je ne sais quoi. But like more and more, I'm like,
Maybe
that's
not.
a kind of a plea to romanticism. And the way this fits into this conversation is like, as I said, like that kind of conversation between like brand versus performance, where it's like, I do hope that for the best brands, and if you want to really truly make a difference, Canva wins, and like having the human element
just like
in it,
maintaining a coherency, making it easy to like create within guardrails.
Yeah, exactly, within guardrails. With the opposite being like, you can put those same guardrails into Facebook, and it doesn't matter if you're a friggin' bank trying to sell home loans. Like every single ad is going to be individualized and personalized to the individual. They're going to be in it based on like the millions and millions of different parameters from their engagement and how they engage with the internet and content. And that will be far more effective than, you know, the human element within brand. Or maybe we'll just like change our perspective and be like, oh no, there's still a human element because we're setting the guardrails. We're prompting it. We're prompting it in this way or that way to be like, make sure it's kind of classy and you know what I mean? And we're like, I made this. I made these 1 billion ads.
Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. Congratulations to Magic Brief and the acquisition. I'm sure we'll find a way to get maybe Dan back on to talk about whatever.
You were watching the UFC with Dan last week, and you didn't use your journalism to like
no.
I mean, I know we heard about this earlier than the announcement, but like, why didn't you prod harder?
I should have prodded harder. I'm just a babe in the woods.
No, I mean that's just the boys, man.
That's the boys.
That's the boys. Like when my wife always says, like, "Did you ask them about how they're trying for a baby?" I'm like, "Oh, nah." Did you ask them about how, like, you know, their mum died? I'm like, "Oh, nah, I forgot to bring that up. Nah, sorry." Didn't they just get made redundant? I was like, "Oh, yeah, I did." So no, I didn't ask about it.
Yeah, no, it's the same. My wife's the same. She's always like, "What was the gossip?" And I'm like, "Oh, gossip. Well, just she's like, what do you talk about?" It's like, just this and that. This and that. It's the same
We're
thing.
doing some accents.
Although, we all kind of went through what our best accents were. Exactly. Although, as a journalist, I would hope that I transcend that. Anyway, moving on. Congratulations. Another throwback. I know last week we were talking about, Apple's WWDC and iOS 26 Liquid Glass.
Yeah.
Which we both have installed in our phones.
Mm-hmm.
Early reports, I think it's pretty neat. It's a beta, so it's destroying my battery life, but it's the price you pay for being on the cutting edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
now a week and a bit in. They are going, like, the animations are turbo.
Yeah, they are going for it. They're trying to make it delightful, and power to them.
I still like it. At the moment, I think they may need to dial it down a touch.
Yeah, I think they do need to dial it down. It's
the animations are a little crazy.
But I see the logic. I see what they're getting at. And
it's fun. It's nice. I couldn't go back now. I certainly couldn't go back.
Yeah, so congratulations. But one thing I did want to bring up, and we didn't talk about it last week. It was talked about in the presentation, but we didn't mention it. But Apple Music has added a new feature, which is automatically interesting because Apple Music doesn't add new features super often.
Because they don't have to.
They don't have to. They don't care. They don't have to compete with Spotify, who are constantly, trying to change the game at all times. Apple Music added a feature called Auto Mix,
which Spotify has had for a while. Like in that, songs will just blend into each other on certain playlists or whatever. If you said that.
Yeah. But the Apple version is quite intense.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know it existed until I was listening to an album. I was listening to Hannah Diamond with my daughter in the car. Hannah Diamond, hyper pop kind of stuff, your standard. And, like, everything was going normally and fine. Listened to an album, because I still listen to albums. I'm old school like that.
Yep.
And then between, like, tracks 4 and 5, all of a sudden, it just, like, rammed itself into the chorus of track 5 in this, like, really intense manner. It just, like, bang, and I was like, what? And that's when I found out that there's a new feature where it would just seemingly at random decide to, like, DJ mix 2 tracks together.
Yeah, and this is the reason it gets so extreme is that, like, just to clarify, it absolutely shouldn't do it when you're just listening to an album.
No.
It's fine if it's doing it between different artists and different on a playlist or whatever, but it shouldn't just do it when you're listening to a regular album.
No,
You're
there's
listening
no world where like it should just be like normal for 4 tracks and then just like DJ.
Like it just seems wrong if you listen to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and Apple's AI is like, I actually have a good idea about how this should have gone. I actually have a way better idea, but it is funny because yes, it does sometimes decide. When you're just listening to like a playlist or a radio, it's like this should like crossfade straight into the chorus, which is like 30 seconds into the next track.
Yeah, way into the next track.
Like way into it. Which, is an interesting way to consume music. It's okay when you listen to a DJ set. But the thing that... And first I do want to point out that, and I said this in the Discord, but they've definitely been testing this server side for a little while. Because I'm like... About a month ago, I had this happen a couple of times on last iOS. Like a weird crossfade. And I was like, did I just fucking hear that? And then when they announced it at WWDC, I was like, fuck. I was part of like the A/B test or whatever as they're trying to figure out whether people like this. But it is creating, especially on like when I listen to my radio station on Apple Music, which automatically just like plays... It's really bad. It's not... As everything recommendation-wise on Apple Music is very bad compared to Spotify.
It's... The recommendation algorithm is woeful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand... It's taking... Have we talked about this in the podcast before? Just like...
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's taking into consideration other factors, like my location. I think I've said... I had like a playlist that I was building. There was kind of garage tracks. I put like 3 kind of garage / post-dubsteppy tracks. And its first recommendation to add to it was Violent Soho Covered in Chrome. That's just like a straight up and down rock track.
Exactly. A Triple J rock banger.
And it, don't get me wrong, I like Violent Soho.
Sure, but not for that playlist.
But not for that playlist. But like, it's obviously just like taking into consideration you're in Australia, you seem to listen to some Triple J bands from time to time. Why not add this? And then the second one was like the Chemical Brothers, The Salmon Dance.
Yeah.
Which is just like one of the most kind of cheesy, I guess, like house tracks. I love the Chemical Brothers, don't get me wrong.
We're not begrudging any of these artists, but
like what is going on with like Spotify would never
do that. And again, Spotify is built around its recommendation algorithm, and it's also built around the fact that like, Spotify never wants the music to stop. So if you get to the end of an album or you get to the end of a playlist, it's just going to keep rolling on versions of what you've been listening to or something that's relevant. Whereas Apple Music, and it's in the age of endless feeds, it's a beautiful restraint that when you get to a playlist, Apple Music is like, all right, no more music until you select something else. But yeah, and this was actually, this is allegedly one of the reasons why they bought Shazam is to help power like their recommendations and like, build a sonic knowledge of how music works. Doesn't seem to have really done anything.
No, they're so bad at stuff like this, Apple.
No. There's no impetus to innovate, whereas Spotify's goal is you must be listening to Spotify 24/7.
Yeah. So we just need to keep it.
We need to give you something.
Yeah. The other Apple, again, I think I posted in the Discord. I'm not sure I mentioned it. I searched on Apple Music Soul Wax crack, but I spelt it CRACK. The way that the word crack is spelled. No results. Because it turns out that the way that it's spelt on the album is KRACK. But like Apple Music, literally, if you don't spell it...
You correctly... exactly.
Like Soulwax crack with one letter wrong, it's like, nah, can't find it, sorry. It literally is like no results. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Spotify, you can like search a lyric and the song will come up.
Yeah.
This is what happens when like you're the incumbent.
You're the incumbent, you don't have to... It's not your sole focus in the world.
And also, even like the revenue that comes from Apple Music is just negligible compared to the revenue they're making. It's just never going to be a priority.
Yeah, no, totally. I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, I have heard that the Apple Music team, like on the dev side, is really small, like shockingly small, which is funny, especially considering like, iTunes used to be the be-all and end-all of music consumption for a while. At least like paid digital music, and now they sort of are happy to coast. Again, Spotify's in like a fucking knife fight to maintain
Yeah.
revenue, relevance, whatever.
Yeah, because again, as we said, since we started Down Round, their three biggest competitors are Apple Music, which obviously comes on the phone, YouTube Music, which comes on the phone and comes with YouTube Premium, and like Amazon Prime Music, which
Amazon Music. Yeah.
which like, but if you have Amazon Prime, you get it for free. I don't know how many people in Australia listen to it, but in America, it's like
a few people have popped up on in the Discord to say that they listen to Amazon Music, and power to you.
Yeah, in America, it's much bigger. I think it's like 13% of music streaming is.
But every now and again, like how the Apple Music, they've got like that weird fucking karaoke mode where you can turn down the vocal stem on like everything.
They have a bunch of stuff like that. They've also got like the binaural beat stuff.
Yeah,
there's like a bunch of like go to sleep mixes or whatever where they intentionally
everything
they use like beta waves or whatever. It's like there's a low level kind of pink noise behind your favorite songs, and also they slightly. I mean, the way that this shit works is. Are people interested in this? I might say, because why not? It's a tech podcast. The way that, like, if you've heard of, like, binaural beats and, like, beta waves and delta waves and this kind of shit, the way, like, apparently your brain kind of operates at certain frequencies that are much lower than you can actually sonically hear, like, whatever it is, like, 3 hertz or like 30 hertz or whatever. Well, actually, humans can hear down to about 20 hertz, whatever. Like 3 hertz or 7 hertz are these different kind of patterns within the brain. And if you, in the left ear and the right ear, if you say you've got like, the left ear is playing the bass at 250 hertz and the right ear is playing it at like 257 hertz, the difference being like 7, then your brain makes up for that difference by like creating the wave at 7 hertz, which then puts you in this relaxing state or whatever it is. There's depending on what the frequency is, there's like 3 different frequencies. Some of them make you more focused, some of them apparently like make you sleepy, some of them make you more relaxed or whatever. These are these different like binaural waves or whatever. Apple have these playlists that they've done with artists that like play their songs with like a low level pink noise, and like they've slightly changed the frequencies so that to like enhance like the beta waves or whatever.
Great.
Good, like good on them, but
wonderful. I mean, they also have like the audio quality on Apple Music is higher.
Yeah,
and like they do put a lot of
noticeably better.
Yeah, and they do put a lot of effort into like the mix for spatial audio and getting artists to actually mix for AirPods, and so like it sounds better across the board, which great. And also like their DJ mixes. They've got a whole library of DJ mixes that Spotify doesn't have, and they do them exclusively, and they seem pretty well curated, and I've listened to some of them, and they're good, so whatever. But every now and again, they do these psycho things, including this fucking auto mix thing. And the thing that really got me is that I was listening again to my station, and it was playing, like, because they normally, when you listen to your station, it normally plays it in, like, batches of the same rough genre, I guess, because it's not psycho to be leaping between different genres. So it'll play like, here are 6 sort of like punk rock tracks, then we'll go into like 6 pop tracks and 6 across whatever stuff you tend to like. But I was listening to one, and I think it was like a Balmoria track, so it was like post rock acoustic guitar, some sort of like lush pads, very vibey and roomy sounding music. I was listening to that while I was walking around, and then the next track was from like the most recent Justice album, so like big French house. And the way that it mixed that is that it just brought in like the lead synth sound from that Justice track, but like distorted and glitchy and just like freaking out over the top of this acoustic guitar. And I was like, this sounds like interesting and cool, but if a normal person heard this mix, they would be like, what the fuck is going on?
That is the interesting thing about Apple Music. Like, almost everything they're doing, and maybe this is a strategy. Like, remember they split out, they've got like the Apple Classic, like the classical music app is like split out. And, I was listening to Brian Eno the other day. It's like, hey, this is better or someone, maybe it wasn't Brian Eno. I think it was Brian Eno. It was like, this is better in the classical music app or whatever. And like, then there's binaural stuff and,
Yeah, Apple.
It's like really going for, I guess, like quite a niche audience, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Well, the Apple Music Classical they bought.
They bought that app that everyone in classical likes.
And then they sort of took a while between the acquisition and releasing Apple Music Classical, and the people who loved that app were kind of peeved about it. But again, it just shows one of these like weird Apple things where they fixate on a problem every now and again, where it's like, who is this relevant to? Because like, you know, obviously a lot of people love classical music, a lot of people who are very interested in classical music, and like the core thesis was the way that normal streaming apps display music is not how classical music listeners consume it, because they like compose it, like who's the composer, who's the performer.
Exactly.
It's very, very different to the rest of music. That is a problem.
Yeah.
But it's not a problem that affects, I would say, most music listeners.
Yeah.
So they've made this whole thing with a whole bunch of editorial content. Presumably there are still, every time I look at the classical app, there's new content and new, like, you know, I don't want to call them playlists. It's almost like they create this whole lush bit of content around like Beethoven as played by fucking Polish orchestras. So they must be paying some people who know their shit.
Yeah, for sure.
But like,
same as like they got Zane Lowe in for Apple Music, who's like, is one of the guys curating these binaural relaxation playlists.
Yeah, they got like 5 radio stations. Yeah. Who's listening to them? I mean, there must be there's probably a lot of people who listen to them.
Probably millions of people.
But you know, again, it's their thing where, at least for a while, their pitch is like Spotify's all automated and autoplay, and we're more human touch, organic. Apple.
Once again, it's that same dichotomy. Like, does the human matter? What's better? Because so far the computer's winning, the robots are winning in most parts.
Yeah,
which I think we can probably go into in episode 2 a lot more. The robots.
So.
Let's talk about, by robots I mean ones and zeros, folks.
That's it. Software. So we're going to move on to the second part of Down Round this week. This is our premium episode. If you're not subscribed to Down Round Premium, you should do it right now.
We want to talk about like 9-figure pay packets at Meta. We want to talk about why make super intelligence? Why
do it? Why are they all talking about it right now? So head to downaround.net and sign up. If you haven't already, you get an extra episode per week. You can join our Discord. That's about it. Those are the 2 benefits you get.
No ads.
No ads. You also no ads. I don't know what ads you're being served these days, but say goodbye to those.
Everyone gets individualized, personalized ads. So like the ads don't reflect on us; they reflect on you.
Exactly. They're looking into your heart, not ours.
Roll the ad.